Atlas was equipped exclusively with 4-cylinder gasoline engines. Two of them are aspirated, 2.0-liter, JLD, for G20, developing 139 horsepower, and 2.4-liter, JLD, for G24, providing 149 horsepower at the output. The third is a turbocharged 1.8, JLE, for G18 TDB, with direct fuel injection and a return of 184 horsepower. It appeared on the list of proposals in March 2019. The engine with a BorgWarner turbocharger and a Bosch control unit is very similar in layout to the VAG 1.8 TSI EA888 series. The declared resource of the Chinese replica is 300,000 kilometers. At the moment, there are no widespread serious malfunctions of the turbo engine. Only isolated cases of major repairs due to the appearance of scuffs on the cylinder walls have been observed. Atmospheric 2.4 resembles a Toyota engine. Among the characteristic shortcomings are the insufficiently durable standard power unit supports, which provoke vibrations at idle. Trembling is detected after 30 to 60,000 kilometers. In addition, after 50 to 100,000 kilometers, errors sometimes popped up indicating problems with the catalyst. When checking its condition, traces of melting and the beginning of destruction were found. After 100 to 150,000 kilometers in the summer heat, some Geely Atlas owners noticed engine interruptions and an increase in coolant temperature. The reason is the accumulation of fluff and debris between the radiators. Questions to the 2-liter units have not yet been noticed. There are two boxes, mechanics and automatic. The 6-speed manual transmission is a GetRag product. It has become uncontested for cars with a 2-liter engine. The 6-band automatic DSI 675F6 is the development of the Australian company Divitrian System International, which is owned by Geely. The automatic transmission relied exclusively on versions with 2.4 and 1.8T engines. The Australian DSI machine, although with a different index, was previously used in the Korean SsangYong Action Sport and New Action. There the box proved to be not the best way. There are also problems in the Atlas. The most common complaints are kicks when shifting. In some cases, malfunctions were eliminated by replacing the inhibitor. Problems with it were typical for cars of the end of 2020, beginning of 2021. Some owners had to resort to repairing the machine at another 50 to 100,000 kilometers. Versions with a 2-liter engine were exclusively front-wheel drive. The remaining modifications could be both mono and all-wheel drive. The ground clearance for the crossover is small, only 163 mm under the plastic crankcase protection. The all-wheel drive system uses a BorgWarner Nextract clutch. It can be blocked up to a speed of 40 km per hour. Cases of repair of key transmission elements are isolated. The incidents affected the transfer case and the rear gearbox. Corrosion occurs at the spline connection of the transfer case and automatic transmission. The picture is similar, as in the Kia and Hyundai crossovers. Episodes of turning in the spline connection have not yet been recorded. The front axle of the Geely Atlas is equipped with McPherson struts, and the rear axle uses a multi-link design. Many owners, after 30 to 80,000 kilometers, have encountered a knocking sound in the steering. The reason is the weakening of the lower bolt of the steering cardan. Less often, the steering rack became a source of knocking. After 30 to 60,000 kilometers, the front shock absorbers could also knock. Silent blocks and ball bearings of levers are quite hardy. Over time, the rear wheel camber adjustment bolts turn sour. From time to time there are complaints about vibration during acceleration. The reason is the development in internal CV joints. The modified hinges went into production in the spring of 2020. Atlas owners have also had to deal with blocking the electric parking brake. The reason is in the servo drive, the motor failed, or the soldering fell off the contacts. The paintwork of the body, in the spirit of modern cars, is not particularly durable. The corrosion resistance of body iron does not yet raise serious questions. However, after 2 to 4 years, paint blisters were found in the area of the plastic lining of the rear wheel arch, covered by the door, as well as on the trunk lid, above the chrome strip and above the lights. Due to the oxidation of the silicone base of the side mirrors, stains that were difficult to wash off sometimes appeared underneath them. One of the unpleasant and mysterious incidents is the spontaneous cracking of the glass of the trunk lid. This happened after 1 to 3 years of operation. After 30 to 80,000 kilometers, and the rear view camera starts to fail. It is noteworthy that it is directly connected to the CAN bus, due to which interruptions in the operation of the camera can cause electronics to fail. After 80 to 120,000 kilometers, generator malfunctions were observed, the voltage regulator failed. Sporadic airbag errors were usually fixed by a simple manipulation, flipping the yellow connector under the driver's seat. In 2021, a number of Geely Atlas came under a recall campaign due to the risk of spontaneous combustion. In severe frosts, below -35, -40 degrees, the fuel line could depressurize, and gasoline ignited as a result of exposure to static electricity. Unfortunately, some cars were seriously damaged. I am glad that nothing serious has happened to the engine so far. The all-wheel drive system and suspension behave quite well. The machine raises some concerns. There are cases of repair, and in the past, Australian boxes did not differ in reliability. Otherwise, everything is like everyone else. The most reliable seems to be the 2-liter version of Geely Atlas. No Nissan X-Trail 3/T32, 2013 to 2022, no. There are no serious comments on the engines yet, with the exception of some points. So, in the case of a 2-liter unit, MR20DD, after 150 to 200,000 kilometers, an increase in oil consumption was sometimes observed. In addition, in gasoline engines, a faulty phase regulator valve sometimes caused melancholy. And after 100 to 150,000 kilometers, the rear support of the power unit came into view. The engines were combined with a 6-speed manual or Xtronic CVT, atmospheric 2.5 was paired only with CVT, and diesel 1.6, only with manual transmission. The manual transmission clutch could require replacement after 150 to 200,000 kilometers. The variator, unfortunately, could be asked for repairs after 100 to 150,000 kilometers. Some lucky ones had to solve the problem for another 30 to 50,000 kilometers. However, in fairness, it is worth noting that there are instances that have passed over 200 to 300,000 kilometers without CVT repair. To extend the resource of the variator allows regular and timely updating of the transmission fluid. After restyling, the variator received a number of improvements and a modified control program. X-Trail T32 with a 2-liter gasoline engine could be either front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. The remaining versions were all-wheel drive. The time-tested Mode 4X4i system is responsible for the distribution of traction along the axis, which differs from the previous version only in electronic filling. The choice of one of the 3 operating modes is carried out using the rotary selector. In automatic mode, the electromagnetic clutch connects the rear wheels as needed. In 4x4 lock mode, the clutch remains locked up to 40 km per hour and then switches to automatic mode. The all-wheel drive system is quite reliable and practically does not need major repairs. But transmission fluid leaks through gearbox seals are sometimes detected after 100,000 kilometers of run. McPherson struts are installed on the front axle, and a multi-link on the rear axle. Ball bearings and rear silent blocks of the front levers become unusable after 100 to 150,000 kilometers. The ball in the original is only assembled with a lever. By this time, the silent blocks of the front subframe may also wear out. Only 4 pieces, 2 front and 2 rear. After 120 to 180,000 kilometers, the turn of silent blocks of the rear levers comes. Front shock absorbers usually serve over 100 to 150,000 kilometers, and rear shock absorbers, over 150 to 200,000 kilometers. Front wheel bearings often had to be updated for another 50 to 100,000 kilometers, rear bearings usually drive over 100 to 150,000 kilometers. After 100 to 150,000 kilometers, the steering rack may knock. Usually the right bearing bushing is to blame. From time to time, damage to the CV joint anthers is detected. There is also a break in the anther of the brake caliper. After 5 to 7 years, sometimes chips on the roof, above the windshield, begin to bloom. After several years, a number of owners notice the sagging of the front bumper, and sometimes the rear. After 100 to 150,000 kilometers, from time to time the parking sensors begin to fail due to the failure of the front sensor. After 100 to 150,000 kilometers, the overrunning clutch of the generator may fail. The air conditioning tube contributes to the reduction of the clutch life. Condensation forms on it, which drips directly onto the coupling. A little later, the generator bearings may also require replacement. The stove motor may make noise or fail after passing 100 to 150,000 kilometers. Perhaps the most mysterious problem was the random failure of electrical equipment that affected pre-restyling models. The reason is poor contact in the CAN bus connection blocks. The treatment involved physically cutting out the pads and connecting the wires directly. Initially, the manufacturer did not acknowledge the problem. Nissan later announced a free service promotion. Nissan X-Trail T32 will delight you with reliable engines. But the variator sometimes causes serious and not unfounded concerns. Fortunately, his refusals are not rampant. The rest of the nodes and components have an acceptable resource, and typical faults are not too expensive to fix. If the variator does not fail, the maintenance of the SUV will not seem burdensome.